Good morning, afternoon, and night to everyone. Today we are going to discuss a case study named MJD Capital Budgeting Decisions During a Pandemic. This analysis is made by the Group 7. The members are Javier Echevarría, Sharon Esquerre, Santiago Rivas, and Angela León. Next one. Thanks. The case presented today focuses primarily on the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects on a small company in the automobile parts manufacturing industry in Ontario. First of all, it is important to highlight that COVID-19 was first identified in December 2019, and with its expansion, it had consequences not only in the health of people, but also in the economy of countries and various companies. It affected several companies, forcing some to close and others to seek an alternative solution that would basically focus on adaptation according to the opportunities they identified as the situation of each one of them. As stated before, the case focuses on a small company called MJD Manufacturing that and its industries is automobile parts manufacturing, which has declined during the pandemic period due to the low demand. MJD has been a player in this industry since 1961, and from the circumstances it faces, has identified the need to adapt, thus has recognized the opportunity to venture into another industries while the pandemic continues. Its options are between adapting existing machines or acquiring new ones to generate new products that are expected to maintain or increase their demand. Next one, please. Okay, in terms of the case participants, the automobile parts manufacturing industry is identified as one of them, which is located in the province of Ontario at the north of Toronto, Canada. It has a size of 5 billion Canadian dollars and has 180 companies with 12,000 employees. In the other hand, we have the company of the case to develop, MJD Manufacturing, located in Ontario too. It produces windshield wipers for combat vehicles, airbags for combat vehicles too, and tailored plastic trim for driver side and passenger side windows. Its revenues in 2019 reaches 27 million Canadian dollars, and it has 40 employees. It is important to mention that this company has been deeply involved in community initiatives and charity campaigns since its inception. In addition, the ownership of the company has remained in the hands of Harris family during all these years. It has been involved in the industry, with Emma Harris currently as chief executive. She shares the organizational decisions with the family members that take part of the business. Making such decisions require 80% of the total vote of the stakeholders. Next, please.
Good morning, everyone. Talking about Emma Harris investment opportunities, Emma Harris has first to analyze the COVID-19 situation, and she recognized the potential opportunity to invest in equipment and machinery to produce COVID-19 supplies, because that is going to be the new high demand products people's gonna need. And talking about the opportunities, she has the opportunity to buy new machinery and retool some of MJD's operations to produce COVID-19 supplies. She has two alternatives that are the face shields and the N95 masks. And in the case of the pros of face shields, the company has to retool the windshield wiper manufacturing machine to produce face shields, and this is a beneficiary because there is not going to need to buy new equipment to produce the face shields. And other pros are the profits that are more than 80%, because the cost of each face shields is going to be 1.65 per unit, and it's going to be sold at $3.10. And talking about the cons, are the operating expenses that are going to grow 2% per year, and also the 20 days of inventory and the 25 of hurry times to produce the face shields. In the case of N95 masks, this product is a high demand product that is going to be really helpful to sell the N95 masks in a short time than the face shields. And the principal cons of N95 mask is that there is not gonna need the retailing equipment, because they are gonna buy new equipment, and it will cost more than the investment of to produce the face shields. And also the expenses is gonna grow 2% per year. Talking about the Emma Harris possible risks, well, MJD's manufacturing has to consider different scenarios to invest in products related to COVID-19, and that's why the enterprise was taking into consideration just some quotes of different scientists that predict how long the COVID is going to persist in business life. In the crisis, endure for a long time if the investment is going to be a huge opportunity, but unfortunately, at the beginning of the pandemic, this was very uncertain because nobody knows if it will end quickly or will take years. So according with that, the first possible risk that the company will have if they invest in COVID-19 supplies is that the pandemic will end quickly and they will not have any demand from the public, or just for a few months, but that is not going to be considerably profitable, open a business just for a few months. Also, the company has to consider the vaccine distribution. That is going to be really important to be in the new normality. And finally, Harry has to weigh this potential investment against growing MJD's current business. This is because competitors are gonna appear as same as MJD's opportunities, and they could produce cheaper PPE. And if the growing of MJD's current business is higher than the investment during the next months of the pandemic, the company will have no good revenues and of the opportunity cost.
Okay, I'm going to talk about a comparison between the financials of MJD and those of their peers. First, operationally speaking, the MJD gross margin shows that the company knows how to manage their production costs better than the average of their competitors, even showing a gap higher than 4% with the company with the lowest gross margin. In terms of the earnings before taxes margin, this indicator shows that the company knows how to run all their operations that represent expenses related to workforce, administrative tasks, better than the average of their sector. Next, please. In terms of their average net margin of 2.98%, as you can see, this indicates that the company manages all their non-operational expenses, like those related to interest, taxes, and other extraordinary expenses, better than most of their competitors. In terms of how the company manages the capital invested by their own shareholders, the return on equity indicates that there's less rentability for every dollar invested in the company than the average of its peers. Lastly, with the return of assets of MJD, this indicates that the company's assets generate less rentability on their own than the assets of the majority of their peers, but not by much. Next, please. Well, to talk about the financial vulnerability, we need to talk about how these investments can generate profits on the different scenarios. In the case of the N95 masks project, Emma Harris already secured a grant of 1 million by the government of Ontario, which alleviates the level of risk of these investments. According to Mrs. Harris, the level of demand for this product can be 4 million to 6 million in the first year, all of which will be increasing in the next few years, as you can see in this cash flow. Next, please. Next. And next. There. And given the different forecast expectations, the internal rate of return for each case is very different. In a low sales scenario, the investment in new equipment can generate an annual rate of growth of 13% to the company. With a more moderate projection, 34%, and with a more optimistic projection, an annual rate of growth higher than 50%, as you can see. Next, please. In the case of the face shield investments for new equipment, these investments can also be alleviated by a grant by the government. Only this time it's not sure if the grant can be of 1 million or half a million, which give us two scenarios of profitability. Next, please. As you can see with the level of internal rate of return, this project in both of their cases gives back to the company all their initial investment and more, making it a very profitable project. However, it must be taken into account all the profits that MJD is losing by retooling the windshield wiper machinery. Next, please.
Well, now I'm going to talk about how should the investment be financed. Well, as we know from previously, the face shields are easier to achieve production due to the ability to repurpose and retool equipment for the production of the product. Taking this in mind, we consider that MJD should secure the contract for 2.5 million units with the government of Ontario. Also secure the 500K to 1 million grant from the same government. And for further investment, bank line of credit should be a viable option due to MJD being a relatively small company that may need some external financing. On the other hand, we have the N95 face masks that as a whole have a way higher demand than the face shields, but have more internal complications due to the lack of equipment that MJD possesses for production and increasing operation expenses each year. We consider that they should also accept for the N95 masks to also accept the $1 million grant granted by the government of Ontario. And since MJD lacks the equipment necessary for the production of the facial masks, leasing could be a viable option to circumvent the inability to repurpose equipment and get some needed equipment for the production. Now, in terms of the core ratios for MJD, we consider that the return on equity will decrease due to an increase on the financial expenses each year, and the return on assets will increase due to the increase of the debt that the firm will experience. Next, please. Now, is there any other financial instruments that the company could use? We consider that debt factoring could be used as an alternative to sell the invoices and raise finance so they can achieve the investments for both PPE alternatives and not depend completely on government grants. And we also consider that invoice discounting could be another financial instrument that MJD could use. Also, its function is very similar to that of factoring, but the firm has a complete responsibility when it comes to collect all the receivables from customers. Could you return to the previous one, please? Now, excuse us for the lack of order, but for the other financing alternatives that MJD could have, we have negotiable trade documents could be used to raise funds for the financing of the investment, even if it's a more expensive alternative than other ones. One negative for this is that there might be the possibility that MJD's ability to raise funds from other sources could be affected due to the bank constantly checking the status of the trade documents. Also, a simpler alternative could be overdrafts, even though it might be restricted for more of a short-term solution. We now know that the pandemic caused by the COVID-19 lasted more than a year, no, right? In this case, in this specific case, it is uncertain, so it might depend on that. Next, please. Next one, please.
Okay. Well, we must highlight that there are situations that no company can predict. We also must highlight that at the beginning of the pandemic, all the businesses were uncertain and they had to take some risks to continue generating incomes. Also, that from the two investments that we showed, we consider the facial masks to be the most profitable one. and that the current profitability projection of these investments lack information about the opportunity cost that the company is losing by not continuing to sell windshield wipers or allocating more capital in one of their current businesses. We recommend to assemble a risk management plan to be prepared for the future. We also recommend to Mrs. Harris that she analyze the current context of the pandemic and all the pros and cons of each alternative of investment. We also recommend that Mrs. Harris uses factoring or negotiable trade documents for this plan. We also recommend that a comparison between all the internal rate of return presented in this analysis and those, if the company continued to sell windshield wipers or expanding the operations of one of the current businesses, must be presented. Next, please. Well, that's all. Thank you so much for the time.